They say, death has 1,000 faces. We gave it one. We call it the Grim Reaper. Picture not an image on a wall or a costume at a party, but an idea so durable it has crossed centuries, languages, and belief systems, cutting through wars and plagues, poetry and pop culture, until it stands alone as the most recognizable embodiment of mortality on Earth. Tonight, we follow that idea. We trace how the Reaper was born, why it wears what it wears, why it carries what it carries, and how its meaning has changed every time humans have changed the stories we tell about life, justice, fear, and the unknown. Begin before the Reaper existed, before the robe, before the scythe, before the bones. In the oldest myths, death is not a skeleton. Death is a god who works within a cosmic order. In ancient Egypt, Anubis, jackal-headed, silent, meticulous, leans over the dead to protect and to prepare, weighing the heart against the feather of truth. In Greece, Thanatos arrives on soft wings to extinguish life like a candle, while his brother, Hypnos, brings sleep. In India, Yama rules as Dharmaraja, the king of justice, calculating the consequences of karma and dispatching messengers to ferry souls to their next form. None of these are the Grim Reaper. They are administrators, custodians, judges, divine functionaries in a system that explains what comes after. But in Europe, in the 14th century, something happens that the old systems cannot absorb. Death stops being an abstraction and becomes a smell in the streets, a rhythm of bells, a daily mathematics of loss. The Black Death sweeps through towns and farms with an efficiency that mocks kings and priests alike. When death is everywhere, the mind insists on giving it a face you can point to. From frescoes and woodcuts, from sermons and village rumor, a figure takes shape, bone without flesh, wrapped in a hooded robe like a funeral cleric, brandishing the tool of harvest. The scythe is not merely a weapon, it is an argument. If life is a field, then death is the reaping. If bread must be cut from the stalk, so must a life be taken from the world. The metaphor is devastating because it is ordinary. The Reaper doesn't murder. He harvests. Across cemeteries and chapel walls, death dances with all ranks of society the Danse, Macabre, a king, a bishop, a bride, a peasant. One by one, the skeleton leads them by the hand. It is a sermon in pictures. Status dissolves at the grave. And yet, even in the terror, there is order. The hourglass appears. Time runs, grains slipping into a cone of silence. Death does not strike at random. He arrives when the sand is gone. Over the following centuries, the Reaper hardens from symbol into character. In Renaissance allegories, he is omnipresent, a lean figure lurking at the edge of abundance. In Bruegel's great panorama of devastation, death rides and cuts and piles the world with bodies, but his face is no villain's snarl. It is the emptiness of matter. He kills because the season turns. He kills because the bell tolls. Then the 19th century gives this presence its modern name. The Grim Reaper enters English as a phrase with Victorian bite, draped in black, to match the era's elaborate mourning rituals. He walks out of sermons and into literature. He points a long finger in Dickens' Christmas yet to come. He waits at the margins of poems as the inevitable pronoun. He, by the industrial age, the Reaper has two powers, to frighten and to focus. Memento Mori is no longer just a skull on a scholar's desk. It is a visitor who reminds you that your days are counted. But the Reaper is not only European. Humanity, everywhere, gives shape to the end. In Mexico, death wears the feminine. She is La Santa Muerte, holy death, robed, skeletal, scythe in hand, but prayed to with flowers and tequila, entrusted with the private petitions that polite society will not hear. She protects, she avenges, she heals. She sits on home altars glowing with candles, claimed by the poor, the fearful, the brave. The church rejects her. Millions embrace her. She is death domesticated, death as ally. In South Asia, Yama remains a judge, not a harvester. He does not stalk by night. He sits in court. He is the gravity behind the rules of consequence. Around him swirl the stories of messengers who tug the silver cord of life free from the body at the rightful time. The moral is different from the reaper's field. Here, what cuts you down is not the swing of a scythe, but the accounting of your actions. In East Asia, the Japanese word Shinigami, death gods, arises late, colored by imported Western imagery but remixed into something new. Sometimes they are monstrous, sometimes bureaucrats, sometimes charming, sometimes tragic. They learn your name. They write it down. They do not simply take, they schedule. Northern Europe knows an Anku, a hooded skeleton who drives a creaking cart to gather the newly dead. The Slavic world whispers of Giltano, an old woman with a venomous tongue who stings life away. The British Isles hear the banshees cry. Different masks, same wind. Culture after culture says, the end is not a concept, it knocks. So, what does it want? What does the Reaper mean? In Christian imagination, death is both enemy and instrument. The Book of Revelation's Pale Rider is named as death, given power over a quarter of the earth. But angels also attend the dying. Michael weighs, Azrael carries, and the psalmist taunts the grave with a promise of defeat. For believers, the Reaper's power is provisional. The scythe can fell the stalk. It cannot forbid the seed to rise again. In Islam, Malak al-Maut, the angel of death, acts at God's command. He is not a tyrant, he is punctual. He arrives because your appointed time is written. Fear him if you like, but understand, he is only doing his job. In Buddhism and Hinduism, death is one motion in a wheel. If you want to defy the Reaper, do not bargain. Practice detachment. The skull is a meditation object, not a threat. Yama's frown is the face of justice. Liberation does not come from escaping death, but from escaping the compulsions that keep you coming back. This is where psychology joins the ritual. The Grim Reaper is an external picture of an internal fact. He is the archetype of endings, the shadow of your own finitude projected onto the night. He is what your dreams send when a life chapter must close. A hooded figure at the threshold, a door you fear to open. Jung would say, you must greet him. Not because you love him, but because to deny him is to live half a life. Only by looking at the scythe do you understand the value of the harvest. Philosophy sharpens the point. The Stoics advise daily rehearsal of death, not as morbidity, but as medicine. Memento Mori, they say. Remember, you will die, so live justly now. Existentialists rephrase it. Your death is yours alone. Nothing more certainly individualizes a life than the fact that no one else can die your death for you. If you do not plan to live deliberately, the Reaper will do your planning for you. And yet, we joke. We domesticate the terrible with laughter. The Reaper plays chess with a medieval knight on a wind-carved beach, and genius cinema gives us a black banner to hang our questions from. He shows up to a suburban dinner in a sketch comedy film and complains about the salmon mousse. He slips on a banana peel in a cartoon. He becomes a recurring character in a sitcom, bored, snarky, kind of lonely. Humor is not disrespect, it is technique. If we can make death ridiculous, then for a moment we are not afraid, we also befriend him. In a fantasy series, death rides a white horse and speaks in a voice that rattles with kindness. He loves cats, he takes his duty seriously. He is patient with humans because he has seen everything. In another story, Death narrates a young girl's life with a tenderness that makes his work almost unbearable. These portraits do not erase brutality. They add compassion. They ask whether fear is the only way to look at the end. Meanwhile, video games give us toy swords to swing at the inevitable. We duel death in a clock tower, dodge flying scythes, win on the third try. We wear his mask and become him for an afternoon. We watch him pop into a simulation, check a clipboard, and vanish. It is power, fantasy, and rehearsal and satire all at once. In a novel, death convenes with other death figures to divide jurisdictions. In a comic, death is a goth girl with an ankh who takes your hand and makes you feel safe. None of these cancel the hospital monitor's flatline. All of them help us endure it. Strip away the costumes, and a pattern emerges. When societies are driven by harvest and famine, death carries a scythe. When law and accountability define a culture's imagination, death sits as judge. When anonymity and bureaucracy shape life, death writes names in ledgers. When violence and plague strike, death gallops with a sword. When modernity breeds irony, death cracks jokes. The Reaper is a mirror. He always wears what we fear most about our own time, but there is another pattern: guidance. Behind the terror stands the psychopomper soul's escort. Hermes once did it, leading shades with a caduceus. Valkyries did it, selecting the slain. Anubis did it, steady hands on linen bandages. The Reaper inherits their task in a stripped-down form. He is not there to explain heaven or hell. He is not there to weigh or forgive. He is there to take you from here to there. If the living need laws and myths, the dying need only a guide. To understand why the Reaper endures, consider what happens when we pretend he doesn't. We numb ourselves with distraction. We treat time as infinite and relationships as replaceable. We hoard, we postpone, we hold grudges. The Reaper's silhouette reappears the moment the phone rings at midnight or the scan shows a shadow. Denial fails precisely because reality does not. The Reaper survives our attempts to ignore him for the same reason gravity survives our attempts to fly without wings. So what, then, is the use of a figure who cannot be bargained with? Paradoxically, he gives us leverage not over him, but over ourselves. Knowing that he stands at the end changes what we do with the middle. People who keep a skull on the desk do not necessarily become morbid. They tend to become focused. People who write wills do not die faster. They worry less. People who practice remembering that those they love will one day disappear are often kinder right now. The Reaper, terrible as he is, can be a teacher. This is why he is carved on ringstones and painted behind altars. Why he walks through museums and memes alike. He presses the question: if today were a good day to die, not because you wish it, but because it came, would you be at peace with how you spent the days before? You cannot answer that with a theory. You answer it with a life. Still, we should not romanticize him. The Reaper's work is as often brutal as it is instructive. There is nothing poetic about a child's funeral, nothing wise about a war's pile of bones. The scythe does not discriminate, and that is part of what makes the image so unbearable. It asks us to find meaning where none is guaranteed. Some turn to faith. Some turn to art. Some turn to service. All of these are forms of argument against oblivion. The Reaper hears them and swings anyway. But it matters that we speak. If we look closely, we can see how societies build rituals to talk back. The Day of the Dead is not a denial of death. It is a conversation with its sugar skulls and marigolds and photographs saying, "You are gone, but you are here, awake, a hawker, a hymn, a painted face, a naming of names at dawn. These are fences around the field. Not to keep the reaper out, but to keep the living together while he passes through, and fashions change. The reaper of the plague years was a public health notice in human form. The reaper of the Romantic era was a muse for poets. The reaper of the 20th century wore a mushroom cloud's shadow. The reaper of the digital age is a viral GIF, a meme that softens the edge by repetition. When a culture fears anonymity, death appears as an accountant. When a culture fears meaninglessness, death becomes an absurdist clown. When a culture fears injustice, death's scepter turns into scales. If you want to know what a society is afraid of, look at the costume it gives to the Grim Reaper. Even the tools tell a story. The scythe is the emblem of inevitability, but it is not the only instrument death has carried. In earlier art, he shot arrows like a plague god. He swung a sword like a horseman of apocalypse. He held an hourglass to mark the boundary between promise and regret. He cut the thread like the Greek Mori, whose shears severed destiny itself. Each tool is a grammar. Each says, "There is a way this happens." It speaks a language you already know. So, what do we do with this knowledge, beyond nodding grimly? We deal in the currency the reaper cannot spend. Attention. If his hourglass drains, ours must fill. If his job is to end, ours is to begin projects, reconciliations, risks, forgiveness, art, laughter, silence. To live as if he is not coming is childish. To live as if he stands right behind you can be paralyzing. The art is to live with him across the street, visible enough to keep you honest, distant enough to let you dance. There is a reason the gentlest depictions of death are also the most unsettling. When a story shows death as patient and kind, it robs us of the excuse that we were too terrified to look. If death is not always a monster, then we can no longer pretend fear is the only rational posture. We are left instead with responsibility, to say what should be said, to hold who should be held, to work while it is day. At the end, in rooms where machines beep and breaths shorten, the reaper is just a shorthand. What actually arrives is the last exhale, the slackening hand, the way a face returns to something you knew when it slept. No scythe gleams, no robe stirs. A nurse adjusts a sheet. A family steps outside and stares at a sky that keeps behaving like a sky. The figure we've followed all night does not appear, because he was never outside of us. He was the name we gave to the limit that makes the story a story. And yet, the image matters. The robe, the bones, the blade. These are more than Halloween. They are lenses. They focus light on what otherwise blurs. They let us hold our fear at arm's length, like a specimen, and ask questions we would not dare ask with empty hands. What is a good life? What is a good death? What would it take to meet that hooded silhouette with less panic and more peace? The answers are humble. Show up for people. Make something that outlives you. Tell the truth faster. Learn how to lose. Practice gratitude until it is muscle memory. Put your affairs in order before someone else must. Keep a calendar that remembers birthdays and a conscience that remembers promises. Accept help, offer it, laugh often, grieve thoroughly, love on purpose. The Grim Reaper will not applaud that list. He will not object either. He will keep his appointment book and, when the page turns, he will come. That is his only line, his only scene. The rest belongs to us. The old myths understood this. Anubis weighed the heart against a feather, and the test was not esoteric knowledge but lightness. How much cruelty and deceit and selfishness did you carry? Yama wrote judgments not to frighten, but to keep the moral economy from breaking. The banshee cried not to curse the house, but to give it time to gather and to say what needed saying. Even the Danse Macabre, for all its grim humor, is an invitation. You, too, must dance. How will you step while the music plays? So, in the end, why has the Grim Reaper endured when so many gods have faded? Because, unlike theologies and empires, he does not require belief. He is not a creed, he is a consequence. He waits for no conversions, and is thwarted by no skepticism. His reality is as simple as a clock, and yet, because we cannot escape him, we have learned to converse with him. We have dressed him to fit our eras, argued with him in books, mocked him in sketches, partnered with him in philosophies, petitioned him in shrines, and stared him down beside hospital beds. We have, in short, used him. That is the secret under the hood. The Grim Reaper is not the Lord of Life. He is a tool of our Zan image that lets us live better if we dare. A reminder that any day could be the last page, so write like you mean it. A figure at the horizon line that keeps our eyes from drifting. A silent witness who makes every hello and every goodbye heavier and therefore truer. They say death has 1,000 faces. We gave it one. We hung a scythe in its hand and a hood over its skull and told it to wait in the doorway while we gathered our courage. Sometimes we laugh at it. Sometimes we pray to it. Sometimes we draw it close and call it friend. Always, it keeps time. Listen to the faint hiss of sand in the glass. Feel the weight of the hand you can hold today. Look at the work that must be done before dusk. When the figure finally steps forward, let it find you busy with the living. Let it find you speaking the words you had saved. Let it find you less surprised than grateful. And when your harvest comes, may it be abundant. May the field be bright with what you planted. May the cut be clean, the burden light. May the guide be gentle, the way clear. And may the story that ends then be one that was fully told.